How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be looking at a game from Norway Chess. Now, Norway Chess has ended since it ended a few days ago. Magnus Carlsen won the men's section, and Muzichuk won the women's section, I believe. And I still wanted to look at this game. This was from round 8. This was between Hikaru Nakamura and Gukesh, and I thought it was a really good game by Hikaru and very instructive stuff. But before we get into it, if you like this video, you like all the videos I make, only if you do, please feel free to smash, as Hikaru would say, the subscribe button. It would mean a lot trying to get to 200 here pretty soon. So, yeah, if you like the video, please subscribe. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the game. Hikaru played e4, Gukesh played e5. So this was a 4-knight Scotch. It can also transpose if essentially Hikaru had played knight c3, Gukesh plays knight f6, and then d4. You get the same type of position, right? Or literally the exact same position. So after knight c3, Gukesh plays bishop b4. So the idea behind this is that he's pinning the knight, which is kind of responsible for this pawn. So Hikaru takes on c6, then plays bishop d3, protecting the pawn. Castles, d5. And this is some theoretical stuff which we don't necessarily have to go into detail about. f3, bishop h5. Here, you know, if Hikaru tries to take the pawn, tries to take this pawn, Gukesh can play this move, queen d4 check, and he's going to get the knight back. And with that, you know, probably after knight takes, queen takes, probably get this pawn back as well. So after bishop h5, Hikaru played bishop g5, pinning the knight. Gukesh took. And again, I think this is all theory. Knight takes, queen takes b2, bishop c5 check, and then queen e5, rook e1, knight e7, king h8. Like, I think this is all still theory. Like, yeah, there were 4 games before this, so clearly this was well known. So not really to like gloss over the moves, but you know, Hikaru gets a pawn, Gukesh gets the pawn back on b2, rook b8. Here, Gukesh has to play bishop c5 check as to get out of this, and rook e8. So now if the knight is taken, then there is a bishop takes h7 check, and the queen is won. So knight e7, and after queen e2, queen e4, lining up with the bishop to threaten mate. Gukesh played bishop g6, and then after knight takes g6, this is where Gukesh, whom I assume was out of theory, messed up. He played f takes g6. Now, you might be wondering, like, what is wrong with f takes? Now, normally it is advised that people play h takes, you capture towards the center, and everything's fine and dandy. Oftentimes, f takes can be associated with a sort of like this diagonal weakening up, the diagonal being like the light squares where the king is. But you might be thinking, well, the king's on h8, so what difference does it make? The reason that f takes is bad is because after rook takes b8, and it is important that Hikaru trades a set of rooks. After rook takes b8, quite simply, the queen and bishop are going to be lined up against this pawn structure forever, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Because obviously, if Gukesh plays g5, then queen takes h7 is mate. If Gukesh plays h6, then you win the pawn on g6, and yeah, I think the reason why it was important for Hikaru to trade rooks is because maybe Gukesh could try and muster something up with rook e8, with both rooks on the board to try to dislodge the queen. But after rook takes b8, this queen is going to be able to stay on this diagonal as long as she so desires. So after rook takes b8, Hikaru played g3. It is kind of worth noting, the other idea behind the whole queen-bishop diagonal is that you do need to do something about it. You need to break through this pawn structure at some point, and the way that Hikaru is going to do it is by going h4, h5. That's going to be the idea we see later, because obviously, once the pawn arrives on h5, Gukesh will be unable to take, and if he just leaves it there, then there will be weaknesses made. But you might be thinking, well, why doesn't Hikaru play h4 first? Well, it's important in these types of positions to be patient. So if Hikaru plays h4, then Gukesh could play this move queen g3. And there's kind of a subtle idea to go like bishop d6 and queen h2 mate. Now here specifically, Hikaru always has this kind of bailout of like queen e8. Goes like queen e8, because obviously if the queen is taken, then there is mate. But the thing is, Gukesh wouldn't have to take the queen. He can play this move bishop f8. Then after queen takes b8, Gukesh can either take this pawn first or take the rook. Either way, it's going to be a draw. Yeah, I was just checking to make sure the eval bar was on. Yeah, it's going to be a draw either way. So Hikaru always has that bailout. However, after h4, queen g3, if Hikaru kind of tries to insist with like h5, then Gukesh has this very subtle move, and it's really a move you would only know if you realize that queen e8's an idea that you have to stop, which is rook f8. And now the idea is that you can put a bishop on d6 and then play queen h2, because if you try to play bishop d6 earlier, then again, Hikaru has his bailout, queen e8 check. Whereas with this move, rook f8, you enable the possibility of playing bishop d6, and if Hikaru tries to play queen e8 now, well, here, queen h4 is checkmate. It wouldn't be check, is sort of the point. So, anyway, after, so let's say after rook takes b8, Hikaru doesn't want to play h4 immediately, so he plays g3. The idea, quite simply, is that now Hikaru is going to play king g2 and be able to play h4, h5 without worry of the queen getting in and the bishop and things like that. And quite simply, there's not much that Gukesh can do about it. So Gukesh tries bishop b6, Hikaru plays h4, queen c5. Gukesh is kind of trying to create his own sort of like phantom threats on the diagonal, but what Hikaru smartly recognizes, maybe not even a bit smart, he probably just has goated intuition, which is that queen f2 does nothing. He just goes f4. So if Gukesh goes queen f2, Hikaru just goes king h3, and there are no checks. So I think sometimes, you know, as like amateur level players, even like club level players, we see these types of like attacks with like the queen and bishop battery and just assume we have to do something about it. You know, like play a move like rook f1, which I think the engine didn't mind rook f1, but obviously you'd probably rather have your rook active, or even like rook e2, which would blunder to queen g1, and then now you're in trouble because of this move bishop f2, and the pawn on g3 is attacked, right? But Hikaru recognizes that he doesn't have to do anything about queen f2, just goes f4. Like, so what? Mate me. So, mate him, Gukesh did not do. Gukesh played queen f5, trying to trade queens. Now, if you're an astute observer, you might notice that Hikaru could trade on f5 and then win the pawn, because obviously he has a back rank issue. So if the bishop were to be taken, then rook e8 would be mate after rook f8, rook takes. However, Hikaru might have not wanted, after like g6, bishop e4, to go into an opposite colored bishop ending. As you can see, the computer eval does like white, but it is essentially just 3-on-2 on the same side, which I think in most positions, or in a lot of positions, would be a draw with best play. Hikaru probably would be able to outplay Gukesh from that type of endgame. I don't remember what he said in his sort of like post-game sort of video about this variation, but I do also understand from Hikaru's perspective, like, after queen c4, you just have a pretty dominant position with, like, your bishop, your queen, your rook has the open file. Like, why just trade into an endgame which could peter out to a draw? So, after queen c4, Gukesh plays queen f6, and you might kind of think, like, well, now, you know, queen e4, there's queen f5, you know, so no, the queen's no longer in e4. What's the point of Hikaru's position now? Well, it's going to kind of, you know, show. He first puts the rook on e5, Gukesh plays queen d6, c3, queen a3, I think some repeating happened. It's kind of Hikaru doing like a tease repeat, like, oh, I'm going to repeat twice and make you think that there could be a possibility of a draw, but obviously that's not the case. Hikaru plays queen e4, just putting the queen back on the e4 square. I guess the queen did just go back to e4. I've asked this philosophical question earlier of like, oh, what happens if the queen doesn't stay on e4? But apparently I misremembered. The queen goes back to the e4 square. Yeah, because what Hikaru did, and see, I'm learning as I'm sort of like helping present this to you. He puts the rook on the e5 square on the e5 square to take away the f5 square. So now he's able to play queen e4 without the queen going into f5. chess is fascinating. That's just what I gotta say, right? So some repeating happens, teasing a little bit by Hikaru, and then eventually Hikaru finally kind of cracks through with h5, making use of the diagonal. Obviously, if the pawn is taken, then queen takes h7 as mate. So Gukesh is in dire straits here. Gukesh tries to go queen d7 check, which again, if you're Hikaru, you don't fear the checks. Just go king g2, and you are going to be fine. Gukesh plays bishop d6, rook e6, rook to f6 is played by Gukesh, and this is where kind of like Hikaru kind of sort of makes his winning, moves, I guess you could say. I was trying to think of a more eloquent way to say it, but rook e8, bishop f8, queen a8. So now he is dominating the 8th rank. So no sort of Hikaru's gameplay. Like he stations the queen on the e4 square accompanying the bishop, but then when he's able to break through with his pawn, he kind of pivots to the 8th rank, right? So Gukesh tries queen d6 because obviously you have to protect against the bishop. The only move to do it is to play queen d6, but that enables Hikaru to go rook d8 and not queen c8 first. First he takes on g6, opens the h file, and then goes queen c8. And now there's a whole other idea to go queen h3. And, moves like bishop c4, for instance, win. So, note this queen's journey. First, the queen's on e4, then goes, gets pushed away temporarily, goes back to e4, goes to a8, then goes to c8, with the idea to go to h3. So, very fascinating stuff by Hikaru. Gukesh tries queen c5. Hikaru plays this nice move, bishop e4, with the idea. So the idea is that you would like to play queen h3 here, but the reason Gukesh played well, I guess there would be queen h5. I'm actually kind of missing the point, so just ignore what I said. But the idea behind bishop e4 is to go bishop d5 and play queen h3 mate, because the bishop sort of controls the g8 square. Where I got confused was I thought bishop d5 was just to cut off the queen from the h5 square. I think I was being a little too fancy. Quite simply, you're just trying to go bishop d5. It's protected by the rook, that is, and threatened checkmate with queen h3. So that's Hikaru's idea. Gukesh tries g5, kind of a desperation move. Hikaru plays f takes g5, which again, he does open up the f file. He's not worried about the checks. Queen f2, king h3. And if Gukesh had played queen f1, Hikaru would play bishop g2, and Gukesh has nothing. Best he would have is queen f5, but after queen takes, rook takes, Hikaru can play g6. I thought it was saying that queen f5 was like forced mate for white. I guess it kind of changed its mind, but this would be completely winning. You have the bishop sort of like pinned down to the king. You play move like either bishop e4 or g6. I might like bishop e4 better stylistically, and there's just nothing you can do. If you try to move the king to the h7 square, then bishop e4 is a pin. So yeah, there's not a lot going for Gukesh in that position. So Gukesh tries rook f7, and then Hikaru plays g6 and queen g4, quite simply threatening mate in 2 with queen h4 and queen h7. Gukesh tries queen f1, but then after bishop g2, again, not afraid of the checks, queen c1. Queen c1 has the idea to defend the imminent queen h4 check with queen h6, but Hikaru plays the star move, one of the prettiest moves I've seen in a while, bishop d5, which forces resignation. Now, why is bishop d5 so pretty? Because quite simply, well, one, there's nothing Gukesh can do. Like, the rook has to stay aligned with the bishop. The bishop's pinned to the king, and the queen, all you could do, I guess, is trade, which is, not going to be good. But the idea behind bishop d5 is to go bishop f7, and then take the bishop, because you are disconnecting his rook from his bishop. Even if you trade queens as black, you still have bishop f7 coming, and there's nothing you can do. You can't move the bishop, you can't put another defender on the bishop, and you can't go king g8 because it's illegal. So Anyway, after this beautiful move, bishop d5, this prompted Gukesh to resign, and obviously, so Norway Chess is done, so we kind of have all the storylines in place. I think Hikaru's going to be fine. He did seem to act like he would retire like from classical chess if he struggled in this tournament, like in the classical, which clearly he didn't. I think this game kind of solidified a solid positioning for him, so as long as he didn't lose any of the remaining games, if the remaining classical games, then he was going to be fine. As for Gukesh, I'm not sure what to think. I mean, I'm never going to be one to like criticize a world champion, but he just seems to be struggling for world championship, standards. Hopefully he can get his footing back and be one of the more dominant players of this sort of generation. But yeah, I mean that's that. It'll be interesting to monitor both Gukesh and Hikaru in the coming years. So thank you all so much for watching. Again, if you like this video, please feel free to drop a like, comment if you want, even if it's snarky. I'm always accepting of those, and subscribe. That would be greatly appreciated, and I will talk to you all for the next video. Peace.